morning. Thank you for joining today's second session, Discover, Navigate, Achieve, Overcoming Today's Challenges in Real Estate. My name is Brooke Lewis, Vice President of Sales and your host for this session. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. He has spent the better part of the last 3 decades in the real estate industry. He became a successful real estate agent in 1987, then shifted towards influence and leadership. That shift really helped grow numerous brokerages and at one point led to ownership involvement of 9 Keller Williams offices. While still selling real estate, he decided to pursue speaking and real estate coaching at the highest level, becoming a master coach with Workman Success Systems. He's led over 1,000 classes on agent attraction, agent recruiting, agent retention, and real estate systems throughout the US and Canada. He and his team actively sell real estate today and want to help others like you unlock their potential. There will be time with our speaker after his presentation, so please hold your questions until the end. And without further ado, get comfortable in your camp chair and join me in giving a warm welcome to Rick Jiha.
Thank you so much, Brooke. I appreciate that introduction. Selling real estate now for 42 years and 42 and a half. And I'm here in the Northern California area of the San Francisco Bay Area and the East Bay more specifically. And just a little bit of background, I was born in Oakland, raised in Fremont, California, and I wanted to be a dentist and I got rejected by 13 dental schools. And I already had about 70 relatives in real estate at the time. And they were all saying, hey, that must be a sign. So I started selling real estate, got my license in May of 1980 and started selling real estate then, but went really hard at it starting in 1987, as Brooke mentioned. So I have been also coaching, speaking, and training for about 29 years now. In fact, next year in May will be my 30th anniversary of the first time I started coaching and training. And I love the industry. And as all of you are out there, we are actively in the industry. Now, I want to make sure that we all kind of get what you can possibly get out of what I'm going to talk about for the next 45 minutes or so. And that is possibly putting yourself in a position where you are not so set on what you already know as it relates to how to handle a market that is shifted. So let me just say for a minute, this is my 5th major recession in my 42 years selling real estate. And I could say that I've probably never been more relaxed in any of the recessions. Certainly the last one between 2007 and 2010 was financially devastating for me and many, many others that I know. I used to own 9 Keller Williams Realty franchises. And a lot of them were in the worst foreclosure and short sale areas of the Northern California area: Grass Valley, Yuba City, Stockton, Modesto, Antioch, Brentwood, Tracy, all of those areas. And I can say this for sure, I learned lessons that still drive me today. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I love the title that this program has come up with for what I'm talking about, because it really is about navigating and achieving. And we also have to watch our language. I've elected to not call it a shifting market. Certainly when I talk to my team, I do have a large real estate team, the Rick Jiha real estate team, and there's 9 agents plus me, that I say this is a market of opportunity. And yet what I love about having, Joshua Cantrell and Brooke Coleman Lewis, who just introduced me, and the backing of companies like JCP Disclosures and First American Natural Hazards Disclosures, those companies are my support system. What I find a lot with real estate agents, and I just want to stop, I'm not really doing a commercial here, I'm being brutally honest with you, that when I talk to a real estate agent that's new and I found out they haven't met with a JCP rep and they haven't met with a natural disclosures rep. I mean, did you just hear Patrick McClellan's thing? Blows my mind that after 42 years, I'm still witnessing things that happen in our industry that I know so little about. This is not an industry to handle alone. This is not for the weak. This is for the people who are willing to learn, to ask for help, and to reach out. I always insist that you meet with your title rep, your home warranty rep, your JCP person, all of these people, your natural hazard disclosure, so you start to have a more thorough understanding, because the best way to be successful in this real estate industry is to be very confident about who you are and what you know. and to stay in your own lane. What Patrick's tried to explain today is not something I would ever explain myself. I would say, it's okay. I have the right resource. I could reach out. I actually wrote his email address down because I was so stunned at some of the things he talked about in Pacifica and Daly City and those areas that I actively sell homes in. I want to know these things. I want to be able to educate my client. But let's go back to where we are in the industry right now. There are people I could pick one real estate office and I could walk in and I would be able to find a person who is literally dying on the vine in one office, and 2 offices down, I'd find somebody who was killing it, making more money than he knew what to do with. What's the difference? We certainly, if that's the case, if they're in the same location and they're working out of the same office and they're in the same environment, can you actually blame it on the market or the brokerage or the office they're in or the office they sit in? No. We have to look at one thing, and this one thing hopefully will set you off, because where are we right now? We're in mid to late October. And that means we have 2 full months, November and December, as a runway to start practicing so that we can have 2023 be our best year ever. Imagine that. It can be our best year ever. Have you heard the prognosticators? I know I have. I was talking to a lender the other day, and he said, Rick, we are projecting that interest rates could be as high as 9 by the end of this year and as low as 4.5 by the end of the first quarter. Guess what? That's something I stayed away from. It's prognosticating. You know why? It always gets me in trouble. Okay. In my first marriage in 1989, we had lived in a smaller home and we bought a bigger home. We paid $292,000 for it in Fremont, California. We were so excited. Huge 1/3 of an acre lot, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, single story with, plenty of room to put a pool in one day. I was so excited. $292 we paid for it, right? Well, that next year, 1990, I heard from the IRS that I made a lot of money in 89 and that I had to pay some taxes. We didn't have that taxes. So we did what we could. And by 1992, 3 years after we bought it, we were in a position where we had to refinance and take some money out. 3 years later, the property appraised, I bought it for $292, it appraised for $232, 20% less than I paid for it 3 years earlier. Okay. Now, a couple years later, the interest rates dropped and we wanted to refi. Guess what it appraised for? It appraised for $192, exactly $100,000 less than I paid for it a few years earlier. Now, in my divorce, my ex-wife got that house. We've had that house since 1989. She still has it. It's worth $1.6 million today. Okay. So what happens in real estate is not in your control. And the quicker you realize that you spending any time at all in your mind on what you don't control is a waste of your valuable time. And it doesn't move you in the direction of your success. But when I bought that residence, we bought it as a residence, not as an investment. And 90% of your clientele, most of you, your clients will be buying for the sake of a residence. And we have to do our best. I'd never heard this before. I understood the concept many years ago, way back when, but I'd never heard these words. Have you heard these lately? I've been hearing it a lot lately. Marry the property, date the rate. Have you heard that? Like, I'm loving that. And my clients are loving it too, because it gives them an understanding that the rate you have is just short term, but the property could be your home for life, right? So you can talk to people about, are you living in your forever home? There's never been a better time now to buy your forever home, to buy your dream home, because those dream homes are dropping in price, right? So there's a lot we can talk about, but let's be honest. If you want to work your way through this market, you have to start with you, taking a really good look at you. And let's be clear, most of us, I want you to listen carefully to this, please. And when I'm speaking to you, I'm actually truly just talking to myself, because I have to work on this stuff all the time. But I want you to be clear that you are the biggest project God gave you. You. And guess what we want to do? We want to help others. Yes, we all do. And yet what we do is we actually help others as a tool to avoid working on ourselves and our business. Do you know that? Like, it is a regular thing in humanity. Now, I've taught millions of classes, not millions, but thousands of classes on something we call behavioral styles. The DISC is one of them. And it doesn't matter how you've learned it, but there are 4 major behavioral styles in humanity. And the majority of the behavioral styles are people who so badly want to help people and will also use the excuse of helping people to keep from doing the things they need to do to succeed in their business. Now, I was in Monterey County last week and I taught a class, a 5-hour class called Business Planning Clinic or Business Planning Workshop. And everybody was handed out a workbook. And before I started the class, I asked everybody in it, I said, how many of you right here, right now, are currently, like you currently know one thing, and I'm asking you this question, but I'm sharing with you how I asked it. You currently know one thing that you could do that if you did it every single day a little bit, your business and your life would explode in a good way. Like really good, like you'd make more money, you'd have a better life, you'd be happier. Every single person in the classroom raised their hand, and that's not new because every time I ask that question, every person in the classroom raises their hand. And this is the question. How many of you know one thing to do that if you did it, your business would be better and you're not currently doing that one thing? Remember the last part of the question. You are not currently doing that one thing. Everybody raises their hand, including me. I know a bunch of things I could be doing on a daily basis. But how many times do we let distractions take us away? Squirrel. Do you ever do that? Like my dog never barks at squirrels and never chases squirrels, but when he sees one, he stops and his nose sticks straight out and he lifts up one paw and stares at them. But man, when I see a squirrel, and what is a squirrel in my world? An email that says, do you need more listings? Right? You get those? Hey, we have a way of getting you more business. Look, the real estate commissions made in 2021 were the biggest in the history of the United States. So what does that mean? We're talking about billions of dollars. And you know what that means? Everybody wants a piece of it. All of the conglomerates want a piece of it. All of the major corporations want a piece of it. Everybody is vying for a piece of our money. But I remember one of my best coaches. This is way back when, 2001. I was coached by a guy named Gary Keller, the founder of Keller Williams Realty. And he said, why pay anybody for anything that you can do yourself for less? And I didn't really quite get that, because even back in 2001, 21 years ago, there were real estate lead aggregators, people figuring out ways to get you leads. And the whole social media thing was just beginning back then, like online URLs and things like that. I've seen it all. But I want you to remember, I know you're probably looking at me going, the guy's got a white beard and gray hair and he's been in the business 42 years. What the freak does he know? Look, I'm not 65 years old and slowing down. I'm freaking ramping up. My team is going crazy right now and we are building, all right? I'm having the time of my life. Now, let's be honest. If I didn't lose millions during 2007 and 2011, literally went to broke living in an apartment, I don't know that I wouldn't be already retired. But once I understood that the reason I got where I got, broke, living paycheck to paycheck in 2011 at 53 years old, was because of the decisions I made. I'm responsible for those, right? If we understand that, if we get clear that exactly where you are, exactly where you are in your health, your wellness, your relationships, what you eat on a daily basis, how much lead generation you do, or how little lead generation you do, all of those things are your responsibility. And you have the power to change them. And can I just add a little side note? I'd love for you to do this right now. Turn around, write it down on a piece of paper. If there's anybody in the room around you, share it with them. Stop comparing yourself to others, please. There's no gain in that. The majority of our minds' negative thoughts come as a result of things that we don't control. We don't control how well other people do in the business or how lousy they do. We don't control people blurting out their opinions, right? I heard a guy say this the other day. Opinions are like armpits. Everybody has a couple of them and they all stink. Well, why would an opinion stink? They would stink because you don't agree with them. But there's another waste of your energy and your time is thinking about what other people said or did, and you have no control over it. Okay. One of the lessons my dad taught me is in 1993, I was, by then, my 13th year in the business, I was like really killing it. And I was starting to get recognized by the board. Back then it was called Southern Alameda County Board of Realtors. And today it's called Bay East. And I got a call from a company. Now I'm still working at my uncle's brokerage in downtown Fremont, California, right? And there wasn't many agents in the company, 8, 10 agents in the company. But they called me and they said, "Hey, Rick, you're one of the top listing agents in Alameda County. We'd like to offer you the job of managing our office." And now you got to remember, I had 70 relatives. A lot of them were, I'm 100% Lebanese. A lot of them what we call off the boat Lebanese, meaning they weren't born and raised here like I was. They were born and raised in Lebanon, came here, got their real estate licenses, and started selling real estate, spoke English with a thick accent. A lot of my uncles had toupees back in the day. Like, I can remember this very succinctly. But all of them were saying, "Don't do it. Don't do it." But my dad pulled me aside one day and he said, "Son, what's the worst thing that could happen to you if you go do that, if you go take that job managing that real estate office?" And I said, "I guess the worst thing is I suck at it and I come back to Uncle Bill's brokerage." And he said, "Yeah, how bad is that?" I said, "That's not bad at all. It's family." He said, "Right." He said, "Do you want to go to your grave saying, 'I wish I had,' or do you want to go to your grave saying, 'I'm glad I did'?" And that one sentence from my dad, I still get a little emotional thinking about it, has driven me the rest of my life. Think about the things you are not doing that you keep telling yourself you're going to do. I was having a conversation with some experienced agents the other day, and I said, "Do either of you have a 13-year-old?" And both of them raised their hand. I said, they both said, "Yeah, we do." And I said, "You know what you ought to do is train your 13-year-old to greet you at the door each night when you come home." Because we as real estate agents, when we leave the house in the morning, if we leave the house, I don't like leaving the house anymore because my boys are in their 30s and grown and gone. We go with our family having the impression that we're going out to make our lives better, to improve the lives of our families and our loved ones. But what do we end up doing? We end up wasting time doing what we call fake work, right? And what our biggest job is to do every day when we go to work, at least 5 days a week, is to get a lead, to get somebody who wants to buy or sell a house, right? Why do you think that JCP and First American are doing these classes? They want to bring value to you, because guess what? If you succeed, they succeed. But guess what? If they succeed, you also succeed, because they're going to bring value at no cost to you, like these classes, right? I'm not getting paid anything for this. I'm doing it because I want to give back to my real estate community, because this community gives to me so much. So here's the thing. I want you to think for a moment about what's going on in your days. Is your day controlling you, or are you controlling your day? And here's a way to look at it. Think about a firefighter and an architect. Have any of you heard this analogy? What would an architect do? And an architect would design their day. A firefighter puts out fires all day long. Okay? Think about that. They put out fires all day long. Do you want to be that? Do you want to be the firefighter putting out, like you're reacting to everything instead of having a proactive calendar? Well, I'm to the stage in my life, finally. I wish I would have learned this a long time ago, and I didn't. So here I am, but I'm loving it. Because of the way I run my business, I have a Calendly link out there that people can click on and book 30 minutes of my time randomly, even when I don't know about it. I got to tell you, you want to see something that puts pressure on you to know your schedule and be good at it? That does. So what does that tell you? I know, like I literally have this afternoon, 2 to 4 lead generation time. It's in my calendar. It's all blocked out. I know that at 1:45, I'm taking the dog out because my wife's not home to pee one more time. And then I'm sitting down at 2 o'clock and I'm going to call for 2 hours. I need to get more listings. Now, I have more listings right now at one time than I've had since, I don't know, I can't even remember, 5, 6, 7 years since I had this many at one time, because when I get them, they just sell, right? Well, they're not selling as quickly. That doesn't mean you stop getting them, you skill up. This is a market where we skill up. And guess what? The reason I call it a market of opportunity is a lot of agents won't skill up. They'll just get out, like they did between 2007 and 2011. I don't want that to be you. If this is really what you want to do, then do it, and do it better than everyone else. But don't worry about everyone else. Do it better tomorrow than you did today. That's all. Just think about you and improving what you can do tomorrow over what you did today. Simple. Now, lead generation is not a problem. Consistency of lead generation is a huge problem in almost everybody's business. If you find someone like me who runs a big real estate team, you will probably hear the words that leads aren't a problem, conversion and nurturing are. But for the majority of individual real estate agents, leads are a problem. So when I got into the real estate business in 1980, the phone on my desk was a dial phone. Shortly after, they replaced it with those button phones, you know, click, 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 right? A dial phone. Remember that? We had answering services. I'd come into the office in the morning, I'd pick up the phone, I'd go, it's Rick over at Good Real Estate. Can I clear the voicemails, right? Clear the messages. They weren't really voicemails. People would answer the phone while you're there and they'd take down written messages and you'd call them back, right? Things are much different. I remember getting our first fax machine. It was crazy, right? I remember 1991 having the first dial-up computer for MLS after they got rid of the books. I so didn't want to get rid of the books. I loved the books. Brooke's laughing her ass off at me right now. It's okay. So, but here's the thing, guys. We have to understand that we now have so much available to us. I remember going on a listing appointment once. I was with Good Real Estate, my uncle's brokerage, and I knew I was competing against Coldwell Banker, huge, Remax, huge, from my tiny little uncle's brokerage. And I remember going there and I didn't have much stuff, nice stuff. And I got there and I was interviewing. It was so cool. It was two women who owned condos right next door to each other. And I was basically interviewing to list both condos. So I did my best. But when I gave them my little folder, it was in a manila envelope. And the Coldwell Banker one was all nicely bound. And the Remax one was nicely bound and they were really thick. Mine was thin. They called me back a week later and they said, we want you to come back to the house and talk to us one more time. I was so excited. I thought that meant I haven't lost it. I haven't lost the listings. And when I got there, they had a conversation with me almost like a parent. And we were about the same age. I think I was in my mid 30s, right? Where would I have been? Yeah, I would have been mid 30s. And they were in their mid 30s and they were single. And they were both moving to a new development in Dublin. And they needed to sell their two condos in Fremont. And they basically lectured me and they held up my stuff and they said, look at this. And they opened it and the papers fell out. And then they opened the beautiful Coldwell Banker one. It was all bound and nice. And then the Remax one. And they go, and they use this term, stuff. Your stuff sucks, Rick. But I got to tell you, Rick, your enthusiasm, your knowledge of the market, your knowledge of our development, the numbers, how things are going in real estate, was better than anyone we spoke to. We're going to hire you to sell our houses, but we need your stuff to get a little better. I was so excited. I had no idea how I was going to improve my stuff, but I knew I got the listings. But that comes from persistency and it comes from consistency and it comes from another thing that we haven't brought up, and that's enthusiasm. I'm not a big fan of going to Tony Robbins things. Honestly, I'm not. I've done a lot of personal development, a lot of personal coaching, a lot of therapy to figure out why I make mistakes and how I do things. But I go to Tony Robbins and he talks so much about this that I've finally sunken into me that your state, the state of your being, is going to affect your ability to be aware. And my state is so much more energetic now than it's ever been. As you can see, I'm practically coming through the Zoom at you. But here's the thing. How is your state? He talked about coaching Andre Agassi. Andre Agassi, one of the best tennis players in the history of the game. And he said before he went to coach him, he was watching all these videos of his games and he could see energetically when he was up for a match and when he was down for a match. And then when he'd see his energy different, just walking up to the serve line, he would end up losing those matches. Are you energetically ready for a win? Are you getting up excited about your day? Right? Now, some of you maybe pray, some of you listen to music, some of you might read scripture, some of you might like to turn on something motivational, some of you might want to watch Let's Make a Deal on Channel 7. I don't know. But if there is something that picks you up, then do it in the morning. Like for me, my wife thinks I'm nuts. I sing at the top of my lungs in the shower every day. and getting in and out. I'm singing. I put on music. It could be anywhere, seriously, from Frank Sinatra to Pitbull. Like really, it's a huge dramatic difference in music. Country, rap, it doesn't matter. I put on a mix and I go. That brings me up every day. Every morning, I start thinking about what's possible. I play basketball at 65 years old. I started playing basketball at 40. Now, look, I have failed so massively in my life that I'm not willing to anymore, because I've had so many lessons from those failures that now I know what to avoid and what to spend my energy on. Okay. Now, as we look at what I talked about starting to be in control of your day. And do you realize, first, most of us real estate agents don't have a calendar that we use regularly, number one. Number two, the people that do have a calendar put things in it and then don't do what's in the calendar. Come on, how many of us? Raise your hand. You put stuff in the calendar, you go, it's in my calendar. And then like that night, you go back and look at your calendar. Oh, crap. I missed that or forgot to do it or didn't do it. Well, look, I've gotten really good. If I put something in my calendar, I also put an alarm in here, right? Like last night when I went to bed, I said, Siri, she's answering right now. I told her I'm faking it. I said, Siri, set an alarm for 10:45 a.m. It's already in my calendar that I'm going to be doing this with JCP, right? I know I've already got the Zoom link loaded into my calendar. Everything's all there, but I set an alarm. It says set an alarm for 10:45. And that alarm went off at 10:45. Guess what I was doing? I was trying to find some iced tea for me to drink. But I rushed back here. I said, I got to be ready, right? So I know my demons. I know my forgetting. And then I build systems that account for my demons, right? I can remember my son, he had a job that he had to get up ridiculously early. And he knew that I got up early all the time. I used to do a lot of my coaching at 5 a.m. and stuff like that. So what did he do? He built in a system. What was his system at that time? He would call me and say, Dad, if you're up, are you going to be up? And I said, yeah. And he goes, would you mind giving me a call? I got my alarm set. And he would have an alarm set right next to his head. And then he'd have one in the kitchen so that it would go off and he'd have to get up out of bed to turn it off. But then he added a third one, me. Do you know that because of all those fail-safe things that he did just so he wouldn't oversleep for work, he knew his weaknesses. He loves sleep. He knows that he has a tendency to fall back asleep. He built in stops so that it would keep it from happening. And only once of probably over 100 times that I had to call him, had he actually fallen back asleep, because the other fail-safe things were working. What are you doing to build a safe way for you not to miss out on consistent lead gen? Now, I was at a panel about 2 months ago, and I love this little story. And I'm motivated by so many different things. I learn lessons from people that have been in the business no time at all compared to me. And they are some amazing lessons. This guy had been in real estate for 2 years. And before that, he was a Mike Ferry coach, and he was really good at it. His clients did extremely well. I found this out by doing the research. But he started to realize his clients were making much more money selling real estate than he was. And he was the one telling them what to do and how to do it, when to do it. And he was holding them accountable. He goes, geez, this is easy. I could do this. So he went to work. He lives in Las Vegas. And he realized that if he made 25 calls a day, 5 days a week, he would get 3 listing appointments every week. He would usually take 2 of them at least, sometimes all 3. Imagine that. Can you imagine being that consistent, that you made your calls every day, 5 days a week? You had 2 days off. That's a lot. And he was taking 2 to 3 listings a week, 2 to 3 listings a week, sticking to his Mike Ferry scripts. The market shifted. He was on this panel as a person who understood what to do when the market shifted. And so he was the person everybody wanted to ask questions of. And they said, what are you doing now? And he said, what do you mean? I'm doing the same exact things, just more of it. He said, it used to take me 25 calls a day, 5 days a week to get 3 listings. It takes me 50 calls a day, 5 days a week now to get 3 listing appointments. You see that? Like I used to be a door knocker. I'm not as much now, but I was a pretty avid door knocker. And I remember if I knocked on 100 doors, I'd usually get 3 leads and get 1 listing appointment. Well, between 2008 and 2011, I had to knock on 300 doors to get the same result. 300 doors. It tripled the amount of activity. Listen, remember this. Everything works, nothing doesn't. Do something. Do something. Quit getting distracted by all of these bells and whistles and do the things you know how to do that are cheap, free, or easy, right? And some of the things are easy to do. And we usually say anything that's easy to do is easy not to do, right? But pick something and then go do it. I know a guy who sold 36 homes last year, and the only lead generation he did was open houses. Did 4 to 6 a week. A week. He'd find people who had vacant listings in his office, and he'd hold their listing open on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Tuesdays, Mondays, Saturdays, Sundays. And he would door knock before the open houses, right? If he had one on Saturday, he'd try to knock 50 doors a day, Monday through Friday, to announce that Saturday one. If he wasn't holding open, he was door knocking. And he wasn't spending a lot of time at the door. He had these little postcards. He'd put them on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper like this size, and there'd be 4 of them, and he'd cut them, and they just pass them out. Invitation to open house, knock on the door. Hi, we're holding open house. Come and see it. Want to see what your neighbors did? Want to see what values that you have that are going to match yours? Come on by. It works. Everything works. Nothing doesn't. What are you doing? I think YouTube knows that I'm a real estate agent. I think, right? Because every time I go to watch, I'm a big fan of a particular comedian named Sebastian Maniscalco. I need a good laugh once in a while. So once or twice, maybe 3 times a week, I'll go watch a good, funny 3 or 4 minute Sebastian Maniscalco YouTube. But when I go to search it, the first thing that comes up all the time is a commercial about real estate. It's some guy driving a car saying, I'm on my way to a listing appointment. Are you still door knocking, or the old fashioned way that doesn't work? And are you still, here's what I don't like. I don't like people making fun of any way to get real estate business. You want to make YouTubes, you want to make TikToks, you want to do social media posting, you want to door knock. Everything takes time, everything. Just pick one, right? Now, I've been a coach for a company called Workman Success Systems for the last 7 years. I've been coaching for 29, but for 7 years, I've worked with this amazing company out of Salt Lake City, Utah. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to advertise or get coaching clients. I just it's part of the story. And I love that while I'm at coach training as a coach, I'm literally sitting there as an agent learning more about how to run my business and my team. And it really is pretty darn effective. But what we preach at Workman Success Systems is that you have 4 pillars of income where each pillar can individually get your goal. So if you say, I want to sell 24 houses this year, right? Okay, what is your pillar? So that one guy I talked about, his main pillar was open houses. If he did his open houses religiously, could he sell 24 homes? Yes, and he did. Now, after you're really good at that, you want to build your second pillar. What is a second way that you could sell 24 homes a year? Well, maybe referrals, or your database, or your sphere of influence, or door knocking, or internet lead generation, or social media. So there's a lot of different ways, hundreds of thousands of different ways to create leads. But pick your 4 pillars one at a time. Get really good at one, then start another. Get really good at this, then start another. Is it going to happen overnight? No. Is it going to happen in a year? Not necessarily. Now, it's 11:37 Pacific time right now, and I've only got about 8 or 9 more minutes. So I want to share with you some things that are going to be vital. I'm going to ask my sponsors here today if I can send them a link to a business plan workbook. It's from Workman Success Systems. We share it with everybody. It doesn't have anything to do with any real estate company or anything. But the reason I want you to know this is we are at business planning season. I typically teach business planning workshops 30 to 40 times every year between September and January. Every year. And this has been going on since 03, maybe 04. So what, 18 years I've been doing this? So I've literally, think about it. I've taught business planning workshops over 500 times. And the reason I say that is my business plan gets better and better every year as a result of me teaching it. Anthony Robbins says the final step to self-mastery is teaching. When you know something so well and you start sharing it with others. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to get a business plan done, right? It doesn't have to be the workbook I'm going to send you. I'll give the workbook to Brooke and Joshua, and they can send it out to all of you. And why do I want you to do this? Because if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. I know it's an old saying, but it still works. It really does. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. At least, like, the workbook starts with a strategic plan. What's my life and business look like 5 years from now? And then work your way backwards. Think of the book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written by Stephen Covey in 1989, 33 years ago. Still probably one of the best books ever written about business and life. But habit number 2 is begin with the end in mind. What's my life look like there? And I work my way backwards to today. A really good business plan will allow you to get everything in order and work all the way down to how many appointments do I need to do in a week to create my goals. Now, I'll get the business plan workbook sent to them. They can send it to you. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, I want you to think about how you set goals for yourself. My wife sets goals and she calls them her no crap goals, like no crap. She's not into, I'm into setting big, hairy, audacious goals, huge goals that are far above what I've ever accomplished. She's into setting a goal that she will accomplish, but it has to be an amazing goal, but not a big, hairy, audacious goal. So we see things differently there. She's been very successful in her life. But my way of looking at it is if I set a big, hairy, audacious goal, a goal like, so for instance, the most listings I've ever taken in a year was like in 2002, I took 69 listings. I've never taken 100 listings. So I have a big, hairy, audacious goal to take 100 listings in 2023. Well, what if I work really hard and I do all I got to do and I only end up with 75 instead of 100 or 70? Isn't it still better than the best year I ever had? Right? Or if I only hit 50 or 60, still the second or third best year I ever had in 42 years, there's nothing wrong with that. I like to set big, hairy, audacious goals. You get to decide how you're going to set goals. No kidding goals or big, hairy, audacious goals, but decide on something. And remember, you need to set a goal in all areas of your life. People really believe, I cannot even believe how many real estate agents believe that we sell real estate in a vacuum. Like real estate, no, the way human beings do one thing is the way they do everything. So if things are sucking in your relationships, there's probably some levels of your business that are also sucking because you can't ignore those things. They all go together. That's what I love about the business plan workbook I use, is because it combines life and business together. They are going on simultaneously, right? So I want you to think about that. But here's the thing, before we finish up, I want to go back to what I've talked about over and over again today, that our willingness to take care of us first. And I can remember, if I look back to my years where literally I was losing everything in 1953, sorry, in 2011, I was 53 years old and it was my 31st year in the business. And that was the point where I realized I was 1.4 million in debt. I had a credit score of 440. Okay. Now, I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me, but I want to just make a point that I was really, I was rock bottom, so to speak. Okay. But the one thing I knew is if I could just sell more houses, I could pay back debt, right? Sell more and more houses, pay back debt, rebuild. And I was worried at that point at 53 years old that I was going to sell houses to the day I died, because I thought, how am I going to rebuild a retirement in that short amount of time? And honestly, I was relatively miserable, let's be honest. But I knew how to work hard. And I knew that I did. I remember in my apartment one morning, it was a Saturday, it was 2011. And my eyes opened, not because of an alarm, but because it was bright in the room. And I realized if I didn't get up and start making a difference, that I could possibly be broke the rest of my life. So I got out of bed that day, and I remember thinking, because by that time my mom had been gone she passed away 4 years earlier. My sisters had moved up to Lincoln. I didn't have a lot going on. Casey, the girl I was dating, who I'm married to today, was a good support system, but we lived apart. And I remember getting up and saying, I got to go door knocking today. I got to start calling my database again today. I got to get because if you look just a few years earlier, I had 7 members on my team and we were killing it, doing 140 transactions a year, right? But I went out door knocking that day, and I had a couple of people slam the door in my face as normal, but I picked up one really good listing lead. And then at the end of that day, I got a call from an old client who had a house in Fremont worth about 900, and they wanted to sell it and buy a house in Danville for about 1.2. That's about $2.1 million worth of business. And I really started to feel excited that I was back in the saddle again, that it was going to work, right? But there's a lesson there. God and the universe will align and give you rewards when what's coming out of your mouth matches your actions. We real estate agents are horrible at that. We say all the time, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you never do it. But when you promise someone else something, you always go do it. Your relationship with yourself, listen to this, is directly proportional to your relationship with your word, right? Think about the number of people you've promised to do something you would never even think for a minute of not doing it, but you promise yourself you're going to do things, and then suddenly it's not important anymore. I'm going to get up tomorrow and go running. I got to lose this gut. I got to get healthy, right? Tomorrow morning comes, you're like, wow, 5:30 is early. I'm not going running. Besides, I didn't tell anybody else I was going running, so nobody's hurt by this. Well, guess what? You have a clock inside of you, and you have something called your self-esteem. And every time you tell yourself you're going to do something and you don't do it, there's this magical sledgehammer and chiseling away at your self-esteem. It's called lying. You're lying to yourself. You put it out there in the world that you were going to do it. I learned so much about that, guys, that like I have a thing for donuts. Well, if you want to stay 170 and in good shape, you don't eat a lot of donuts. So what I did is I stopped saying when I wasn't going to eat donuts and started saying only when I was going to eat donuts. And now, literally once every 2 months, I'll have 3 or 4 donuts on one day. And then I'm done. I'm good, because I know the price I'll pay if I don't like keep to my habits. So yes, I had to fail a lot. And now at 65, I'm not willing to fail anymore. You got to get responsible for you and quit worrying about everyone else. Your family, yeah, worry about them. But the best way to worry about them is to go out and bring home the money that will allow you to do the things you want to do with your family. Money isn't a why, it's a tool to fund your why. Okay? So if your why is more time with my significant other and my children and this and that, then go make money to do it. All right? Look, take care of you first. You'll be able to help thousands more people afterwards. God gave you that. All right? Now, that's my talk for today. I want to hand it back to Brooke and to Joshua, because if there's any questions, I want to handle them. And thank you very much for taking some time to listen to me today.
Thank you, Rick. That was great. I'm sure many of you have noticed that our chat feature is turned off, but we have saved time for questions and would like to get to each of you if we can. So please use the raise hand option. If you do have a question, we'll do our best to get to you. Once you raise your hand, our organizer will allow you to unmute, but you'll have to actually unmute yourself. And then to keep things moving along, once you've asked your question, we'll mute you again, but if something else pops up, you're welcome to raise your hand again. And I have to mention quickly that it was just kind of ironic. I'm sitting in San Jose area and we just had an earthquake, and someone just looked it up and it was about a 5.1 earthquake.
Oh, wow.
So just as I was about to jump on camera, we started shaking. So kind of funny.
Holy cow. I didn't
I
feel
know.
anything. I'm over in my house in Pleasant Hill and I didn't feel anything. So
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Perfect timing. Okay, does anyone have any questions for Rick? Oh, I see Annette Kalik has a question.
Hi, Annette.
Hi there. Great job. Thank you so much. We so appreciate you. You mentioned a quote and I missed the end, but I loved what you said and I forgot it. You said the state of your ability will affect your
results.
results.
The
Okay.
state of your body, like your energy, your enthusiasm, right?
Got it.
And I listened to a lady named Mo Anderson. She used to be the co-chairman of the board at Keller Williams. And she used to have a Century 21 office in Oklahoma years ago. And she used to stand in front of them. We saw a video of it in the 70s where she literally jump up and down. She was one of the first female owners of Century 21 franchises. And she'd jump up and down and say, to be enthusiastic, you have to act enthusiastic. And she would jump up and down in front of her office every morning to get them to be excited, enthusiastic, to lift their state, their energy state, right? So
That's
good
awesome.
question, Annette. Yeah.
And what is your favorite lead gen method?
To this day, my favorite lead generation, most people have between 200 and 1,400 contacts in their phone. I have 37,000, right? And remember, your contacts are not just people who own homes, they're the people in the industry. So when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, I was doing these Zoom calls And my attendance on my Zoom calls, I've been doing free Friday coaching calls for years for people. Anybody from any company can jump on. And those free Friday coaching calls, the attendance went from 30 or 40 people on each call, where hundreds were watching the recording, to literally hundreds of people on the call and thousands were watching the recording. And all we were preaching to everybody is pick up the phone and call everybody, pick up your phone and call everyone in it and check on them, see how they're doing. Don't talk real estate, just check on them. And 2 out of every 10 conversations were leading to a conversation about real estate during the, like right in the beginning of the pandemic. Why? Because people's lives didn't change other than they were locked at home. So if you were honest and sincere and vulnerable about checking in on them, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? Even drop a gallon of milk on your front porch, I'm happy to. I just want to make sure you're okay. But people were checking on clientele, but not other agents, not people in NHD or JCP or anything. They were just, I said, and I realized that some of my best friends in the industry I was checking on were suffering as much or more than others. So look, it's no different now. We have a worse economy. We have higher interest rates. Pick up your phone and check on people. Check on people. Just call in. And the more conversations you have, my 36-year-old took the test at 19 years old to be in real estate. He failed by one question. Went on. He has a great career. Lives in LA. Between him and his wife, they make 300 grand a year. He just passed the test again. I'm excited out of my mind, even though he hasn't committed to selling real estate, but he did whisper that, Dad, we're thinking of moving back up to Northern California. What am I thinking? He's going to run the Rick G. Hart real estate team soon. That's a long way from where we're at, but I've got that program. But I was telling him the other day, I said, son, you want to succeed in this business? Just start telling from the rooftops that you're a real estate agent, and remember to care for people as a human. Be a better human. You'll be a better real estate agent. Just give your love and attention to everybody as a way. But remember what I said on the call, start with you first. Give your love and attention to you, and you'll be able to reach out to a lot more people. Does that answer your question?
I've seen so much growth in you. So congratulations. So proud of you.
Thank you so much. And that means a lot from people like you
Sure.
who know me. So Marilyn, good to see your face too.
Hey, so Marilyn has a question. Thanks, Annette.
There we go. It won't let me unmute.
Okay, well, I can hear you. So go
Okay,
ahead.
good. Okay, it was telling me that the host wouldn't allow.
We can hear you.
Oh, it's so good to see you. And thank you so much for sharing all of this knowledge and experience that you have. A lot of the things you say, I think we know it, but we need to hear it again. One of the things that you said that really triggered to me is enthusiasm, because, sorry about my voice, you mentioned consistency and persistency, but you added enthusiasm. And that's something that really is a nugget in my head. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask you for our realtors. You said that you make these calls for your lead generation.
Mhm.
You go by a script. I'm sure you've been doing it so long, it's mostly memorized for you, but you have a team of people that you also teach. And if you, excuse me, if you go by a script, would you be willing to share it?
Yeah, and I think too many people get hung up on that. And if you just Google scripts, right, you'd be surprised how much free scripts you can get a hold of just on Google, right? But what I remind people is this, depending on what you're doing, like in other words, if I'm going to call FSBOs or expireds, I use a script, like usually an older Mike Ferry script, or one that I've had some others that I've created myself, all kinds. But when I'm just calling in my phone, I use a script called, hi, how are you? I feel horrible since it's been ages since I checked in with you. How are you doing? And too many people, I was explaining it to somebody the other day on a Zoom, and they said, so you want me to make real estate calls? I said, no, I want you to make human connection calls, right? And you can get other coaches who'll say, no, do this or do that, or say this or say that. Everything works, nothing doesn't, right? And I always say, look, to humanity, all 4 behavioral styles, lead generation is an uncomfortable act, no matter what your behavioral style is. So find the one that's the least uncomfortable for you. The least. They're all going to be uncomfortable. I hate making calls. At 42 years, when I door knock, my right knee still shakes for at least the first 10 doors. I've been doing it forever. Doesn't mean it makes it any more comfortable, but I know that I'll get a result out of it. And all I say is this, if you keep doing it, you don't get a result, then tweak what you're doing. Go get some help. Run what you're saying by other people. But I got to tell you, if you're sincere, authentic, vulnerable, right? On the phone, ask people, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? Remember that if you're a resource for everything, then you'll be their resource for real estate. Last thing, a guy named Dave Jenks, who died a couple years ago, amazing guy. He co-wrote the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, with Gary Keller. Dave Jenks had a huge beginning with Century 21, went to Keller Williams, left there, went on speaking all around the country, went back to Keller Williams and died from cancer while he was there. Dave Jenks used to say one thing, and I still quote it to this day. He used to say, your success in real estate is directly proportional to the number of people who, when they think of real estate, they think of you. Your success in real estate is directly proportional to the number of people who, when they think of real estate, they think of you. And that is about being a resource. So if you just got into this phone, and if you really want to be more dedicated, look in the phone and call only the people that you know own homes, right? That's a good way to start. At least if you really want to be more directive, then call the people that you know own homes, whether you sold them the home or not, right? Like I got into real estate in 1980. I knew hundreds of people that were coming into my mom's restaurant in Fremont that were cops and firefighters, and they all owned homes. I didn't sell it to them, but that didn't mean I wasn't going to try to replace their former realtor, right? It's important that you stop and you do things that move you along. Your family is depending on you. The people you love the most are depending on you. I talked to a guy the other day. He's single. He's in his 50s, 52 years old, never been married, no kids, just broke up an 11-year relationship. He's heartbroken. He's throwing all his energy into that. I said, remember, told him, I didn't want to say his name just in case somebody knows him, but I said, remember, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. Just because you're throwing all your energy into your business, you still have to remember that you have to have balance in your life. How are you eating? Are you exercising? How are you feeding your brain? For me, it's music, right? But I listen to all kinds of motivational stuff. I might listen to a preacher one day. I might listen to Tony Robbins another day. I might listen to a comedian the next day, right? It's all different, but I know what turns me on. At one point in my life, Marilyn, I had 6 alarms set in my phone during the day, 6 of them. And every time it went off, it was a different song, but all 6 songs were songs that I knew would make me tap my foot or move. And when I heard the song, I knew why I set the alarm, to shake my brain out of my negative thinking that was in the moment. Who knows where your brain is, but you get into each day and you're going, things don't go the way you thought they would first thing in the morning, right? You stub your toe. Well, there goes the day. No, there goes your toe. The day's fine, right? So we really have to work on us. Our mind is the biggest problem in real estate today. We're spending so much time. I'm in the gym the other day, guys. I just only go to the gym for one reason, to shower after I play basketball, because I play basketball at a different place. And there's this guy, every 30 seconds, he'd walk up to the mirror and look at himself. Then he went and took all his clothes off because they were sweaty to get ready to go in the shower, had nothing on but his underwear, went back and looked at himself in the mirror again, right? Then went back, got his towel, went into the shower, comes back out, it's got the towel wrapped around, looks in the mirror again, admiring himself, right? I'm like, what is up with this guy? But when I left the gym that morning, I thought, why did you spend so much freaking time worrying about what he was doing? It's none of your freaking business. Just get about your day, right? Think about that. And we all do it, right? You think I'm Mr. Positive, upbeat. I'm going to the airport the other day, dragging my suitcase through the airport, and a lady crosses right in front of me. And in my mind, I couldn't control it all by itself. I go, holy cow, did she wear that on purpose? That's what went through my head. I'm like, oh my God, how judgmental. I want to slap myself. Look, we got a lot to work on. It's a big project. Get busy. And for those of you that are 50 years younger than me, good for you, got a little more runway. But I got to tell you, no matter how old you are, how young you are, today's the start. Today's the start. Make a difference.
Love it. Thanks, Rick. We all need that reminder for sure. I have one more quick question for you, if you wouldn't mind. I know we're almost out of time.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
In your world and in ours, which collide, obviously, it seems like all we hear about on the news and with clients and in every meeting is obviously the interest rates, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I guess my question for you is, whether you're working with a buyer or sellers, how do you continue to motivate them to do just that, to buy or to sell, or to list their house right now in this market, or to buy something in this market, or with these high interest rates, it just seems like that's why there's such a lack of listings, right? Everyone seems scared. So I'm just curious how you continue to motivate people to move, essentially.
That's a great question. So first and foremost, the analytics and numbers are bigger today than they've ever been before, ever in my entire career. We didn't have analytics and numbers in the 80s and early 90s. We had our MLS, we had things like that. But one of the things you find out, I know you maybe heard me say during it, is when we're talking to buyers, we're saying, look, you're going to marry the property and date the rate. And marrying the property means I want you to be in love with the property. I talked to a 29-year-old finance major the other day that we were representing on a transaction, and he knew the numbers. And he said, Rick, I've already calculated it. Even at 7.5%, I can go 4.5 years without refinancing. And if I am able to refinance in any time in those 4.5 years, I'll be able to pay back the extra money I spent within a couple of years. Like, he had it all calculated out. The bottom line is rates are going to come and go, but when it's time to buy your residence, it's time to buy your residence. When I shared the story about the difference between the house I bought and the price it was 3 years later, and then 5 years later, and the price was continually dropping, when I went crying to my accountant, you know what he said? He goes, if you didn't have that house, you'd be paying so much more taxes, because look at the tax break you're getting on your interest payments. And people don't think about that. When people are selling their home or call me and say, I need to talk to you about selling my home, it's probably not a good market, I say, why are you selling? All right. Because everybody wants a script, but there's no script like caring. Why are you selling? Oh, well, we need to do this, or we need to do that, or you'd be surprised. Like, I look at every person that's selling. I've got a listing in one area. They said, we just don't like this area. We don't feel it's a good area to raise our kid in. Okay. There's a reason they want out. Like, they want out. Another reason, they're in a lawsuit. They need the money from there to settle the lawsuit, or their life will not be able to go on. Like, the reasons, there's a guy named Cleve Gaddis, the best coach at Workman Success Systems. He says this one thing: the river of real estate is always flowing. That means the reasons people have to buy and sell never leave, no matter what the economy is. So we're always reminding the individual, what's your reason? Hey, Mr. Buyer, how is it that of all the things that have gone on the last 3 or 4 years that you pick now to buy? And they go, that's a good question. Why do you ask that? I go, because your timing is perfect. There's more homes available. You're not paying 200 grand over asking. Yeah, you're going to pay a little higher interest rate, but do you know that at the lower interest rate, and what you would have had to pay 6 months ago would have been more? And that's not an opinion. That's a provable fact, right? We just sold a house in Pleasant Hill, California for $925 that I absolutely know 7 months ago would have been $1,150,000 without a doubt. Like, without a doubt, it would have gone for $1,150,000 off the shelf. So just the difference alone, if he had been paying 4% back there and paying 7%, it's all good.
Yeah.
So it's not so much a script, it's about caring enough to ask the right questions. And I tell people, if you are just yammering at the mouth and making statements, and you never stop to ask quality questions, you're never going to have a quality career. All right. So we tell people, ask great questions. Why are you selling now? Great. Let me tell you how to handle the market right now.
I love the personal touch of that.
Yeah. And it was a great question, by the way, Brooke. So
thank you. It's just all we hear about.
Yeah.
Well, we are out of time, unfortunately, but Rick, it's just been such a great session with you. This has, just as a reminder to everyone, been Camp Out Session 2, Discover, Navigate, Achieve, Overcoming Today's Challenges in Real Estate.